All right, guys. Joe McDonough here with CageSidePress.com. I am joined by Mr. Jerome Rivera, coming off his UFC debut after being signed in the Dana White Contender Series over the summer. Jerome, how are you?
I'm doing great, Joe. How about yourself?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I appreciate having you. Something that I haven't asked many fighters that I've been interviewing. That maybe I should have, but now as we close, you're going to be the guinea pig, and I'm going to test it on you. As we close out 2020, I'm going to ask you what was your fight of the year? I mean, it seemed like we had everything figured out with Wiley versus Joanna, and then Brandon Moreno and Figueiredo happens. Then you throw in Poirier versus Hooker. Those would be my top three. I don't know if you have another one that you want to throw in there, but what would you say if you were if you was your deciding vote? What would you say is the fight of the year?
That's a hard one. There's been so many good scraps this year. Like even fights that people didn't really like, that didn't get the spotlight, I guess, or the
Yeah.
limelight. There was the one dude. He was Kamzat Chimaev's teammate, Gutaladze or something like that.
Yeah,
he had
yeah,
a
yeah.
fight back in that guy. He had a really good scrap. That was one of my fights. I think that I put for fight of the year. But if I had to pick, I think you have a nice top three there. I think it sounds really good. I earned a lot of respect for Figueiredo and Moreno that night, and honestly, I'd probably call that fight of the year. Just the pace that those guys kept, and the shots those guys took, and the skill displayed on both sides. That was a pretty special fight they had.
Absolutely, and I think, I'm doing it too. I think recency bias plays a factor too. I think that before any votes are put in, you'd have to go and sit and watch those four contenders right in a row, which would be awesome. But it'd be some great fights to watch. But I agree. I think that that the Moreno fight, just I think the background story of it too, with the flyweight division being essentially thrown out a couple of years ago. Brandon Moreno being part of that, being cut from the UFC through no fault of his own, and to kind of come back and get to that point, I think just the storyline is just incredible.
Yeah, that was really cool to see on Moreno's have to go and get cut and then go fight on the regional scene and get the belt in LFA and then come back and still keep doing his thing. And then, making it to the title shot and putting on a performance like that against Figueiredo, that was very impressive. That dude has a lot of heart.
Absolutely, and this fall you stepped into that UFC octagon for the first time. You had your UFC debut, in a losing effort. But what would you say? I guess first off, just take me through the emotions of I'm sure it's been a lifelong dream to get to that point. Competing on Contender Series, all of that, getting that win, and then stepping in the octagon. Just that walk. What did that walk feel like?
Oh man, it was like very surreal. The whole week was very surreal. It didn't feel real. Almost like I had to get to the weigh-ins to realize that it was actually going to happen. But that being said, I don't feel like I got abnormally nervous. I didn't get crazy jitters. I felt comfortable. I felt like I belonged there. Felt just like any other cage once I got in there. But even though I say that's how I felt when I was in there fighting, there was still like some gears that weren't turning. Usually I'm kind of thinking in right field, and I like to be a little unorthodox. Throw some strikes people don't necessarily expect coming. And for some reason, during both of those fights, my brain it was there. I was fighting. I was being me, but I just wasn't hitting those extra gears, and my brain was just not fully there. But overall, it was a great experience, both of those fights. There's things that I wish I'd have done differently. Like I said, I know I have a lot more tricks up my sleeve, and I know I have a lot more skill than what I put on display so far. So it felt good to get my feet wet, but I think this is going to be my real coming out party.
And when you when you talk about kind of those gears not being there, or not turning, is that something that just being in the cage and getting that debut out of the way, it takes care of that? Is that what you think?
I think so. I say I always learn my biggest lessons in a loss. And just seeing the way I was performing against Tyson Nam, I wasn't fighting like myself. I let him make me really uncomfortable, and I fought his style of fight. So I know next time I get in there, I kind of need to calm myself down and just focus. You got to be super concentrated. You got to know what your game plan is. And the thing against Tyson Nam was I only had 8 days to get ready for that fight, so I didn't really have a whole lot of a game plan. It was kind of just, okay, I'm gonna go fight this dude, and I'm gonna do everything I can not to lose. I'm gonna and losing was never a doubt in my mind, but for some reason, I didn't know what my route to victory was. I didn't I didn't say, okay, I'm going to beat him by decision, or, okay, it's going to be a submission. My thing was I was just going to fight. So I think that was my problem. And now in this next fight, we've been able to, even though we had an opponent switch, we have a really good game plan. I know what I'm going out there to do. And I think just the confidence in having that game plan and just knowing what my opponent's bringing to the table, knowing what I want to do against him, I think that's going to help my brain work the way I want it to work.
Mm-hmm. And, you had spoke about, you always learn the most from a loss. And you just told me about a lot of what you learned. What would you say the biggest thing you learned was from that UFC debut against Tyson Nam?
I was fighting very offensive. When I was fighting him, I didn't see that shot coming, the one that he hit me with, the overhand when I threw a leg kick. And it's almost because I wasn't looking for anything coming. I wasn't thinking defensive minded at all. I wasn't thinking about any counters. I was kind of just all offense for a minute. And I think that's what I'm going to take from that one is just I got to go in there and I got to be more focused. I got to be more aware of what my opponent's doing, what stance is he in, what does he like to favor. Because Tyson Nam, he's not a very versatile striker. It's not no secret what he wants to do. He was just stalking me down, trying to land that overhand. So now when I watch that fight, I'm like, dude, why didn't you just block and roll that overhand and hit him with something? And so I went out there and I fought his fight. I fought very uncomfortable. So I know next fight, I'm going to go fight my fight. I'm going to go be confident, and I'm going to go stick to the plan that me and my coaches lay out.
And so for the next fight, there's been a lot of rumors. We've heard Figueiredo's brother. Is that official, or is it Ode Osborne?
The Ode Osborne fight is off the table, and it's kind of weird. I haven't really gotten a reason why. And then also they're saying that Francisco Figueiredo is the next opponent. I haven't gotten a bout agreement or anything like that yet. Okay. So it seems like they're very tentative about announcing this January 20th fight card. But right now, that's the name they threw at me. They said Francisco Figueiredo, January 20th. So, that's what we're getting ready for.
Is it at all, I don't want to say, maybe annoying is the word, but that you're kind of in fight camp, and although you've been told that probably it's Francisco Figueiredo, but maybe not, is that seems like something that would be a nuisance, because, like you said, when you fought the Tyson Nam fight, you only had 8 days notice, and you didn't have that clear path to victory. So, let's say, you prepare for Figueiredo, and then 12 days out, oh no, you're fighting, X, Y, or Z. Does that mess you up mentally at all?
Yeah, it can be a little bit hard, just because there's like a lot of floating pieces like constantly on the UFC's end, on everybody's end with this whole pandemic going on. Like, they're saying, have your passports ready. You got your passport, this and that, but they haven't even told me the fight's going to be in Abu Dhabi yet. So it's like they announced the fight on the 16th and they announced the fight on the 23rd, not the 20th. So I'm like, what's going on, guys? Are you guys going to push it back? Should I still stay? I mean, either way, I'm just going to still stay getting ready. Francisco Figueiredo, there's not a whole lot of tape on that guy. So I'm kind of just judging his style a lot by his brothers. They're probably going to have the same style, jiu-jitsu, probably similar striking. So, right now we're just going to stay just getting my body in the tip-top shape and just plan like we're fighting Deiveson Figueiredo.
Yeah. Francisco, like you said, there's not a lot of tape. Obviously this would be his UFC debut. I believe he hasn't fought since 2019. So it's been a 2-year or a year and a half layoff for him. How do you prepare for a guy like that with not a lot of film? And obviously, like you said, his brother, they do have a gym together. So, I agree with you. I'm assuming that it's very similar. So that is helpful. But for a guy that, you haven't seen tape on much and hasn't fought super recently. So is that hard because you don't know how much that person's improving, obviously?
Yeah, definitely. It does get a little bit difficult there because, like you said, he had one fight in 2019 and he's just been very inactive over like the last 5 or 6 years. So
Yeah.
there's not a whole lot of tape to study on him. But when it comes to that case, then it's kind of like, okay, well, what do guys from his camp do? And thankfully, Figueiredo seems like a pretty close body style to him. And there is one video on this guy, and from what I can see, he does fight a lot like Deiveson, just less polished. I don't think his striking's as good. I don't think he's as explosive. But as far as like their jiu-jitsu, I'm assuming I haven't seen a whole lot of his grappling, but he's a black belt, and I'm assuming he's gonna have similar attacks to what Deiveson has, like really good arming guillotines and heel hooks to scramble and such.
And so, you've obviously, you're known for your grappling, but your striking has, greatly improved, with him being a black belt and probably having a lesser version of the striking of Deiveson Figueiredo and maybe even a better grappling. Would the plan be to keep this fight, standing and utilize your probable striking advantage?
Yeah, definitely. Supposedly what I looked up, he's a black belt in Muay Thai also. So that just motivates me. Like as a kid growing up, like, or even just as a young martial artist growing up, I always thought I had like a chip on my shoulder. I never was like a jiu-jitsu world champ or a boxing gold gloves or a kickboxing world champ. So my thing was always just being well-rounded, and to have an opponent across from me that I know has these high accolades, like a black belt in BJJ, black belt in Muay Thai. It's very motivating for me. I know I got to be ready everywhere. Watching Deiveson Figueiredo's wrestling, I don't see very impressive wrestling defense or offense. So I think I'm going to have a big advantage in the wrestling and being able to dictate where the fight takes place. So I want to use that wrestling to make my striking even more lethal and really just put it on this dude.
Mm-hmm. And you're preparing for, essentially, like you said, you're preparing for Deiveson Figueiredo. There's not many people that can be better than Deiveson Figueiredo, so it's almost like you're getting a lesser version of the Figueiredos. Obviously, we haven't seen Francisco fight too often, but is there added pressure with being 0-1 in the UFC after the Contender Series? Is there added pressure to get that win, or is that something that doesn't even cross your mind? Doesn't matter. I'm just getting in there. It's like you're 0-0.
Yeah, it's not something that's like brought up a whole lot, but just thinking about it, like there's a little bit of pressure there, but there's always pressure to win. I never want to lose a fight, whether it was in the UFC or whether it was LFA or on the regional scene. I always have a lot of pressure on myself to go out there and perform. So, and honestly, I like performing better under pressure. There's been like a lot of little setbacks here in camp, here and there, and even just plans that I was making for after the fight that we're going to kind of put a little bit of pressure on this. Me and my fiance, when the fight was originally planned for Vegas, January 3rd against O'Day Osborne, we were planning to get married, or we were going to go out to Vegas and get married out there the week after, because we've been engaged now for about 1.5 years. And so like stuff like that, I'm not too afraid of the pressure. I feel like I thrive under pressure. So very excited about it. And the fact that I'm fighting Deiveson's brother, I think he's going to have a little bit of pressure coming in. I think there's going to be a lot of hype on him. And, like I said, I'm getting ready to fight the champ. I'm acting like this is Deiveson that I'm getting in there with, because I want to send a message straight to the champ. So I'm very excited, very motivated, and I like the pressure.
I love it. And, congratulations to you and the fiance. You're wearing the LFA shirt right there. Speak on LFA. Do you feel that LFA, obviously it's been a breeding ground for the UFC. It's almost like it's the AHL to the NHL. Do you feel that fighting for LFA, I believe you fought 4 or 5 times?
4 fights with them.
4 fights. And do you feel that really helped you get to the point you're at now, where Contender Series, now into your second fight in the UFC? Do you feel that really was a turning point for you?
Yeah, I think being a part of LFA was a huge game changer. They really just kind of groom you and try and get you ready for that big show. They do the mock weigh-ins. They do the green screen type stuff for production, go and do the round the table interviews. So I think they did a really good job at giving me confidence that I was ready going into that big show. Like when I went and did the interviews at the UFC and did the production photos and all the green screen stuff, it wasn't really a thing, because I was kind of groomed into it from LFA. So yeah, very thankful and very grateful for those guys. And also, like, you look at guys like Demetrius Johnson, right? When he was in the UFC and he was on this tear, I think one of the biggest things he had in his favor was he had the main event experience. He was used to going out there and going 5 rounds and being a main event, having the spotlight on him, as to where some of these guys I think aren't kind of used to that yet. And I have a feeling that's what's going to happen with Francisco in this fight. You know, he's fought for a lot of very small promotions. He hasn't had a promotion like the UFC where he's going to have this big fight week and all this media obligations. So I think LFA did a good job getting me ready for all that.
And does, you had spoken about, the thought is that this fight may take place in Abu Dhabi, but it also may take place in Vegas. You don't really know yet. Is that something that kind of like with the opponent being it's 90% sure it's Francisco, but we're not giving you 100%. How much does that play into, the weight cut and all of that stuff? It must, and I'm sure the UFC sets everything up, but it must add a little something when you're flying to, Abu Dhabi on this flight compared to, going to Vegas.
Yeah, definitely. That's one thing that I really want to try, and I want to get that bout agreement or find out ASAP when and where it's going to be, because that is going to play a big role. A lot of people think that Abu Dhabi sounds like so much fun and it's going to be this blast and you go and have this good time, but really for us it's just business. We're going out there to fight. We're not going out there to go sightsee. We're going to go and fight somebody else and punch somebody in the face. So yeah. Sorry, I lost when I was going there.
When I talked to I talked to Rob Font when he had fought, not when he had fought, when he was coaching in Calvin Cater's corner over at Fight Island, and they had talked about how we wanted to do this, we wanted to do that, but at the end of the day it was a business trip. You see all the Formula One cars, the golfing, all that stuff, but essentially the fighters are training and getting ready to fight. They're not really doing that. One thing I wanted to touch on before I got your prediction for this fight was the amateur career. When I talk to fighters and I look back at throughout their career, some have a 9-fight amateur career, some have, like yourself, a 2-fight. You were 2-0 as an amateur. What tells you that you are ready, to jump to that professional level after a short amateur career? When should it be longer? What was your point where you said, I'm ready to go pro?
My point, so they actually, I think, have mine mixed up on Tapology. I had 4 amateur fights.
Okay.
I had those in a span of about 6 to 8 months. And for myself personally, I felt like I went pro a little bit young. I kind of wish I would have had a little bit more experience in there. Because once you get to that pro level, once you get that first loss, it's a big one to deal with. So yeah, I wish I'd have had a little bit more amateur fights. I had a lot of amateur kickboxing experience. But for me, all the amateurs kind of that were here on the New Mexico scene, I was kind of blowing through those guys. And I was putting myself through these hard, vigorous training camps, not really making a whole lot of money for it. So I think it's important to not go on and have too extensive of an amateur career. Like 10 fights, I feel like is a little bit too much,
Yeah.
Putting your body through what it takes to get ready for a fight and not getting paid any money for it and stuff like that, that gets very challenging. So
Absolutely.
I think 10 fights is a little bit too much. 4 fights I felt wasn't enough for me. I was like when I was a young pro, I was like I had some confidence issues because I was like, did I turn pro too young?
Yeah.
Am I ready to fight these guys? So yeah, I kind of had a lot of those questions, but thankfully my first 4 or 5 fights, I had really good matchups, guys that were equal to my skill level. So yeah, I think it's just kind of finding, throwing out those feelers. The reason that we had turned pro was because they were just every opportunity that kept coming up wasn't really making sense. All the guys they wanted me to fight, we were at the point where if I'm going to fight a dude this good, I might as well fight him in the pros.
Exactly. And I like that explanation. Last thing for me is just, do you have a prediction for this fight that we don't know the exact day, we don't know exactly where it's going to be, and we're pretty sure it's against Francisco Figueiredo, but if it is, do you have a prediction for us?
I'm coming to break this dude. I want to go put it on him in every facet: Muay Thai, striking, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. And I have a feeling that about halfway into the second round, I'm going to be a little bit too much for this guy, and I predict a finish in the second round, TKO.
Awesome. And that first UFC victory will be yours. I appreciate the time, Jerome. Thank you. And I look forward to January and you know, very, very happy holidays to you and the family.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. You have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.